At times like this, I'm questioning my role and responsibility of being a New Testament prophet. And you can look up verses in the New Testament about being a prophet. Even though there were prophets in the Old Testament, New Testament prophets have the same role. And I'm questioning my role because I'm questioning whether I have the responsibility to try to coerce people and twist their arm and appeal to them to get them to take heed of what I'm saying and make adjustments. But I'm questioning that. I'm wondering whether I am supposed to try to appeal to people to change, or whether I'm just supposed to tell them the way things are and for the wickedness to continue in people's attitudes towards me and towards God. And in a way, if a prophet is given the role to deliver a message, is God expecting the message to be heeded or only to be heard? Because it might be that when the prophet speaks, he's only telling what God thinks. He's not trying to twist anyone's arm into doing anything about it or to change. And a prophet's saying, this is going to happen to you for what you've done, what you're doing. And it would be lovely for me if, as a prophet, I could get people to listen to me and appeal to them so that they would change their ways and avoid the situation that they've got themselves into. And that's the situation I'm talking about from William Hartnell, the first Doctor who wanted to use me as a pivot for destroying the validity and the authority and the truth of the Bible, not the verses, but the meaning of the Bible, because I'm saved by Jesus and by Jesus's blood. And I know that I've got spiritual life inside me, but the world in Britain is treating me like I'm not saved. They're not giving me any rights or recognition or friends or friendships or roles or positions in life. And they're judging me. And it's like I've been killed by my own society, like Cain killing Abel. And there were consequences to Cain killing Abel, which led to the flood when Noah built the ark. Now, I'm sure there would have been prophets at the time of Cain and Abel warning about what God was saying about them being indifferent towards Cain and letting him live, and allowing him to have a lineage to develop craftsmen and lucrative offspring and descendants who were eventually killed in the flood. Not eventually, quite soon after Cain. But they didn't listen to the prophets. God decided he was going to destroy the world with a flood. And even if there were prophets saying that was going to happen, their role was not to try to twist people's arm into doing something about the situation they'd got themselves into, but to tell them what was going to happen to them. And I would love it if my videos could cause the world and society to make adjustments from what I've been saying. And for the church leaders to stop misinterpreting the Bible and to listen to me and to make adjustments based on the correct interpretation of the Bible, because there is only one correct interpretation to the Bible. There aren't alternatives where you could believe this or you could believe this or that. There's only one correct interpretation of the Bible. And I've said the church leaders have influenced Britain and the world in Britain to regard me and the Bible by their false interpretation of the Bible. And I'm saying it's false because it means that God is not agreeing with what people are being told that God thinks by the church leaders. And they could be thinking that I'm under judgment when God says I'm not under judgment, because they're interpreting the Bible wrongly. Or they're saying I'm not like Abel, who was murdered by Cain, because my family, some of whom don't like me, like one of my brothers and my dad, who's jealous of me, was like Cain. But they said, well, Cain was let off for killing Abel. God didn't mind. He forgave Cain like Jesus forgiving people, which is the wrong interpretation of the Bible. I'm sorry, but it's the wrong interpretation. If you read the whole Bible and cross-reference it, you will see that murder is the worst sin and requires the death penalty, execution. And people who want to get rid of me or accuse me of being a paedophile or a pervert, or say I've got mental problems and I can't live my life properly, have effectively murdered me. And God feels as strongly towards that situation and the people doing that to me as he felt towards Cain. And although the role was in the Bible that Cain was allowed to live and was given a mark so that people who find him wouldn't kill him, that was not the teaching. The teaching was that Cain was a murderer, and the Bible was saying that facetiously, meaning that Cain should have been put to death for willingly murdering and being jealous of his brother Abel, whose blood, it says in the New Testament, cries out from the earth. Not a very good word. Hebrews 12:24. Now, I've been saying these things on my channel, on YouTube, on my videos, about what the problem is, about how there could be God's judgment as a result of how I've been treated to the next generations. And I would love it if people would listen to me and do something about it, and church leaders would start realizing they've interpreted Cain wrongly and that Cain shouldn't have been let off by God. It wasn't God's will. And that led to the flood, and because people became indifferent and didn't do what they should have done about Cain killing Abel. But they've applied that false role from what the Bible says, not what it teaches, not the lesson of the Bible, the meaning of the Bible, but that what actually happened in the Bible, which is not the teaching, to be applied to my family and the people that don't like me and effectively are treating me like Abel and being let off about it like Cain was. But when Cain was let off about it, what resulted in the people was indifference, which led to the flood, God killing everybody. So I'm a prophet saying this, but I would love it if the church leaders would make adjustments and start interpreting the Bible wrongly and start treating me properly and with recognition and telling society to do that. But they probably won't. So my role as a prophet is only to tell what's been happening and leave it up to God, because it could be that the Bible goes extinct or loses its authority or loses its meaning. And if it loses its meaning, then it's lost its authority and it's gone extinct. And God isn't God anymore because he's not able to act in real life in the way he acted in the Bible. So I wonder if a prophet is not meant to correct people, but only to point out what they've got themselves into. And I would love it if I could correct people and get them to put the right interpretation in place and change their ways to accept that interpretation. But I don't think it's working. I don't think they're watching my videos. They're not listening to me. But a prophet's job in the New Testament and the Old Testament was just to tell the problem, not to try to get people to do anything about it necessarily. And I might just have to be a prophet who has told that the world is under judgment now because of the way British people and the monarchy have allowed me to be treated. And I'm like Abel. And I'm not trying to get them to do something about it, to put it right, to avoid the judgment, because they probably won't. But they're sinning every day over me, over my situation. And God doesn't turn a blind eye to sin. He judges sin, or he leaves. He pulls himself out of the human equation. Now, either of those is quite bad, and the best would be for me to get them to see they've interpreted it wrongly and put it right, and judge my evil family for the way I've been allowed to be treated by people, which they won't. But even if they did, it might not be what God is getting me to say this for. He might just be getting me to say it, to tell it how it is. Whether people listen or don't listen, it's recorded. It's recorded on my hard drive on my phone. It's recorded on the server of YouTube. And it might achieve nothing. People might not watch it, but it still happened. I've still uttered these words. And a prophet utters the words of what God is saying, not with the view to try to correct people necessarily. So I just have to be telling what the problem is. And even if I'm not seeing results of what I've been saying, people being reasonable and making adjustments, I shouldn't be expecting them to, because God didn't expect his prophets to be able to correct the people they were prophesying to. Do you see what I mean? So I hope I'm not a prophet of doom. I hope I'm not a prophet of doom. But it's looking that way that I am. And it's not up to me to get that doom established or to happen. That's up to God. But I'm saying it's highly likely, because I've got the Holy Spirit and I know God is real, that God and what God is like and what he believes in, that God will judge people, because they're not doing, since I've made these videos on Christmas 2025, people have not changed. They're still sinning against me. They're still on BBC News and Sky News. They're not listening to what I've said about not talking casually all the time about sins and murders and deaths and diseases and cancers and measles and chickenpox and cremations and thefts and divorce and every little bit of gossip they can come up with to trivialize sin. They're not listening to me, and they're still doing it. And I'm saying God doesn't like it, but they're not listening to me. So does that make me no longer a prophet? No, because they didn't listen to the prophets. But the prophets were still sent to tell them these things so that it's recorded. And I've told them to listen to my videos and do something about it. But even if they don't, I've still acted as a prophet. And they're not listening to me, and they're still sinning against me every day. And I'm not sucking my thumb saying, people are sinning against me. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they are deliberately judging me, preventing me having recognition and respect, and not listening to the things I've been telling them from God to stop trivializing sinful acts of people and publicizing it all the time. Because when a sin happens, it doesn't happen very often, and it should be regarded with respect. A sin is something to be respected and avoided and regarded as something awful. But people aren't doing that. They're just talking about it every day like it happens every day. And this is what I've said they shouldn't be continuing to do, but they're still continuing to do it. So they're not listening to me as a prophet. Does that stop me being a prophet? No. No, it doesn't.